You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Welcome to Executive Dose, the podcast where pharmaceutical leadership meets unfiltered insight. Hosted by Stephen Beckman, CEO of Ural Pharma. Each episode explores the complex forces shaping today's pharmaceutical industry, from global supply chain stress and regulatory shakeups to innovation in branded and generic drug markets. Join us as we engage C-level leaders and decision makers in candid conversations about navigating disruption, driving growth, and preparing for the next era of pharmaceutical transformation. Curiosity leads, strategy follows. This is the Executive Dose.
Hey, welcome back to the Executive Dose. This is special, kicking off 2026 with a very powerful interview. I think of our independent community pharmacies. I think of our hospital systems. I'm thinking of specialty pharmacy, so many things that are changing within the nation. And I think how important it is if you are a pharmacy operator owner to engage and educate and partner with your state representatives. Well, Stephen Beckman, host of the Executive Dose. We are proud to have our own state representative in the studio, State Representative, 51st District in the state of Pennsylvania, Charity Krupa. Charity, this is that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, Todd, when I first took office, and I've been in now about 3 years, just over 3 years, and I never intended to be on this side of politics. It was an opportunity when the time came that I looked around, and the people that were stepping up to be in this position, most of them were people I knew and I didn't necessarily trust. And I thought, you know what, now's the time to step up. But Todd, what I remember about you is you were one of the very first people who reached out to my office. And I'm not sure if you remember or not, but you came to my office out on 21 and we had a conversation about pharmacy issues. And I really, really appreciate both of your experience and your education, and you're willing to talk about these issues. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Charity, we are very happy to have you. And, I think what's, first of all, is our thanks to you. We always thank our veterans and our first responders, but I think we should always extend it to the people that give of themselves to serve others. And obviously you do that within your role as state representative. So as Todd said, the Executive Dose is really about dialoguing, taking forward ideas, sharing them, opening the doors, letting people see more of what's happening so that we can find more reasonable and powerful outcomes of change that we want to make. And obviously healthcare, there's a lot of things that are good and there's a lot of things that we probably want to change and make better. So maybe we just start and give the audience a little bit about your passion for this area in healthcare and what you hope to hopefully accomplish in terms of your role as representative. And then we'll talk about a couple specific topics that are near and dear to you.
Good, thank you. So just a tiny bit about my background. I am an attorney by trade, farm girl at heart. So my family and I, both my husband and I grew up on farms. We're more hobby farmers now, but we make all our own hay, have beef cattle, have horses, dogs, pigs, pheasants, you name it. And I really believe that we need people in Harrisburg and DC on our school boards, on our local councils that don't necessarily want to be there, but they're there because it often a personal sacrifice because they want to serve the community. So as much as I nothing would bring me more pleasure than never leaving the farm, but I think that we need people to step up and one of my goals as state representative, and I represent the 51st House District, which is the southern half of Fayette County, which is very rural. We're underprivileged, and you really have to fight, so to speak, to get your piece of the pie. And sometimes that fight is in Harrisburg, sometimes that fight is locally. But in rural America right now, healthcare is such a hot topic. It is even in your cities and your blighted areas everywhere right now. So I know that we have Uniontown Hospital in my district, which was in the last few years, WVU Medicine has stepped in, and I give WVU Medicine all just so much gratitude that they came in and stepped in. Since they've come in, they've reopened the labor and delivery unit, and that's another hot topic across Pennsylvania right now. So there's certain places in rural Pennsylvania that you can't even deliver a baby in a hospital in your home county, that you have to go out of county to do that. And obviously there's so many issues with that. But I do serve on the health committee in Harrisburg, so a lot of these issues I get an opportunity to do a deep dive in. But my goal is always to be educated 360 degrees around the issue, and healthcare should be a truly bipartisan issue.
Couldn't agree with you more, and I think the supply chain or value chain of healthcare, from manufacturers like myself down through physicians, nurses, physician assistants, all the healthcare workers, down to pharmacy and ultimately patient, has to be improved. We need to do things that are better, and it's going to take the village in this case. It's not going to take any one industry or any one area. And we have a lot of dynamics now, because we do have things that are being influenced at the federal level, but we're also seeing a lot of changes at the state level. And then a lot of the questions from a business like mine is, how are we handling that? How we handle all the changes that the state want, or can, quite frankly, a state start the momentum on something in terms of good change, whether it be PBM reform or other things that we need to address to ultimately serve the patient in a way. Because in the United States of America, no patient should go out without being able to get good health care, as you mentioned. So let's start with a couple of topics that I know you've been involved in, and this one is obviously an interesting one for a lot of reasons, and that is medical marijuana. And a lot of states have taken charge and have made it available both from medical marijuana as well as recreational. And obviously Pennsylvania is now going through the process there. So why don't we talk a little bit about your thoughts on medical marijuana, where you believe it should be, and how it might or might not help what we're doing, and then the impact that there might be if recreational marijuana is passed in the state.
So I am, it is no secret that I am a strong advocate against legalizing recreational marijuana for a host of reasons. And, if you look at studies that have come out of Colorado, Colorado has been the test subject, right, for legalizing recreational marijuana. And there's that you see for every, and in Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro says, likes to tout that this will be a huge tax revenue increase if we would legalize it and we would tax it. At his budget address in 2025, he included the idea that revenues from marijuana, into his budget, which is just like fairy tale budgeting. You don't include in your budget figures that for something that's currently illegal, both on the state and federal level. But so and out of the studies that have come out of Colorado, for every dollar that it generated in tax revenue, it cost society, I can't remember if it was $4.60 or $4.80 in societal harms, such as everything from traffic accidents, homelessness, truancy issues, addiction issues, obviously. And what people don't realize is the THC that's being manufactured and processed and sold now is not the same marijuana that your grandma was growing in the backyard. I don't think either of my grandmas were growing it, but you guys know what I mean. Yeah. So there's this level of toxicity that people don't understand, and there's all these studies about it leading to psychosis and mental health issues and suicide. And it's interesting, tragically, it seems to have an increased effect on adolescent males. That group really gets hit hard with the suicide and the psychosis. And I firmly believe, too, that it leads to bad decisions. So that being said, though, I do think that there is a legitimate purpose for medicinal marijuana. And so I've got so many nurses in my immediate family. My mom's a nurse, and I grew up with her. She's done everything. She worked 2 jobs when I was in elementary school to put my dad through law school. So she worked at the trauma unit in Ruby and Morgantown. She worked home health care in a hospice unit. She's working in a nursing home now. My daughter's in her final semester at nursing school at Penn State Fayette. My best friend's a nurse. My sister-in-law's a nurse. So I really appreciate having them behind me. And I remember one of the first times I talked, this has been years ago, before I was even thinking about being in this position. Don't quote me on this, but I think they actually legalized medicinal marijuana before we did. And one of the things that she talked about, particularly in the nursing home setting, was when you had patients with dementia or cancer, that, with the dementia patients, it would increase their appetites. With the cancer patients, obviously, in terms of pain control. The one story that always, I've got 3 children, the story about the child or children that have epilepsy. Those are legitimate reasons why we should be doing this. But what has happened in Pennsylvania is it's become a free-for-all. And even in my private law practice, before stepping into this role, I'd have clients tell me that they would do one telehealth visit, claim that they had some kind of anxiety, and boom, they've got a prescription for medical marijuana. So one thing that I've learned since being, that's even as a layperson, before stepping into the public role, there were a lot of red flags with that. And so when this term is the first term I've served on the health committee, and one of the big concerns, and again, this was bipartisan, people on both sides of the aisle recognize this as an issue, that, and I'm going to pull up, there was a January 2025 Spotlight article that talked about a small number of doctors were approving the medical marijuana cards, and forgive me if I don't want to misquote this. So
with that, in terms of whether it's drugs or marijuana, and I agree with you. There are legit. My daughter suffers from chronic migraine since she was 6 years old.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge, is how can we continue to service patients that are in need, whether it be pain management, legitimate anxiety or mental health,
Yes.
and things like epilepsy or migraine. But before you go on to that report, I wanted to go back to one thing you said, because I didn't want to lose the thought of it. You were making the comment about the governor's budget. And one of the questions I always had is, it's always great when you say, hey, we do X and we'll get Y and it will go to where it should go. I think one of the challenges I always assume as a resident of the state is that they generate all this money, but it's not really appropriated or allocated back to the things that they really are selling it for. So in case, if you were going to do something like make marijuana legalized, then it should go back to the health. But there's a good chance that a lot of that money, if it was actually taxed and received, would be going to all kinds of places, but not where. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it absolutely is. And I think it's very telling that in these conversations about legalizing it, part of that tax revenue is always earmarked for a certain amount of societal harms, such as the addiction issues. And so, it amazes me that as the Commonwealth, and I'm an idealist, so I'm always disappointed. I wish I was a realist, but I'm not. But is that really where we want to build Pennsylvania? And right now, they'll argue that all the states around us, or most of the states around us, have legalized it, so we're supposedly losing that tax revenue because people are going across the borders. But two things that come to mind with that. I would love it if Pennsylvania became the place that families wanted to move to as the safe haven, so you can walk up the street with your family and people aren't, visibly high, and that you've got this. And forgive me, and I am sympathetic, you mentioned your daughter, so I don't mean to stereotype, but I think with broad recreational use, and I hear people talking about certain beaches that they like to go to, that now it's no longer what they perceive as a family-oriented place, because when you're walking up to the boardwalk, the smell of marijuana is so overpowering. And I'll tell you, even right in Uniontown, we've got a medical marijuana facility, the dispensary, and it's just up the road from our election bureau, and it is an overpowering odor that I can't imagine how much worse that would be. And in some of these proposals, one that was rammed through the House this session, They wanted to basically put a pot shop on every corner, and they wanted to take away local municipalities' rights. And I believe in local control. So right now in my district, there's several municipalities that are dry municipalities. They don't want alcoholic beverages served within their jurisdiction. Why would we want to take the right away for a municipality to be able to say that they can do that or can't do that with respect to marijuana?
Yeah, I agree with you. I do believe that most people would agree with the concept that there is enough data now to suggest that marijuana does play a medicinal role in very specific areas.
Yep.
So that's channel one. Channel two is the abuse of that to kind of broaden out to less very specific management in healthcare, that people are getting cards, and we should try to control that and reduce that. And then there's recreational. And I think people do see that there's a clear difference between recreational and medicinal marijuana. And we should continue to be able to find ways to manage that more effectively. And
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, and back to the Spotlight article, and this was when House Bill 28 came into play, which I'm a co-sponsor on. So with the Spotlight article, and I think there were some other articles around that time, but it indicated that there were 1,900 approved practitioners who were eligible or approved to do prescriptions for the medical marijuana. And then when you look at the data, of about 1,300 of those doctors who issued at least one medical marijuana certificate, and this is 2022 data, most issued fewer than 100, but there were 3 doctors who each issued more than 11,000 certifications individually. So now you're talking about 1 year. There is no physical way possible that these medical providers had an opportunity to interact with 1,100 patients in a meaningful way that would have justified this type of prescription. So the lawmakers, and again, bipartisan focus on this, is that the way we are doing medical marijuana in Pennsylvania has huge issues. And in addition to the prescription issue, there's also an issue with the labs and the actual content of the substance that's being produced and given out to the public, that there is major inconsistencies and no requirements that meet particular lab test work. So there's an inconsistency that although it's being prescribed and a particular product is being labeled as X, Y, or Z, there's not that safeguard of ensuring that that's actually what it is, like a quality control kind of issue. And in the pharmacy world, I would think that you guys, that would be very frightening to you.
Well, I want to make a comment about
go ahead.
I feel like I'm the Lorax of the trees and I'm the Lorax of the pharmacists. And there's an endocannabinoid system in every single human being, and it plays part in how you react to THC as well as CBD, which is the other side of the cannabis plant. And it's the pharmacist that could dial into how a topical cream or ingesting the vapor or taking in some other, maybe it's a tablet. The administration of cannabis in any of the forms is so tied into the specific disease state, whether that's pain, whether that's mental health, whether that's, like you were saying, Charity, with epilepsy. Mm-hmm. And we're giving these cards out based on the rubber stamp mentality of these physicians who aren't even medication experts. Yeah. So if I were ruler of the country, I would say, hey, number one, it should be medicinal only. Number two, it needs to be governed by our pharmacists who understand how is this impacting you based on sugar intake and other medications you're on and other things that you're experiencing. And if we could control it even at the Pennsylvania level where our pharmacists should be leading some of those decisions, then we're truly using it for medicinal and truly using it for health.
No, that's a really good point, Todd. And I think dispensaries are not run by medical professionals. Right. They're not. And I think there is a way to control that. And to your point, Charity, we operate in the pharmaceutical world under GMP, good manufacturing practice, and we are held to extremely high standards through the FDA and others to ensure the quality of our product meets the expectations. And I think there are things that we can do. And I think it starts with fixing or continuing to fix and continue to evolve, to your point, to make sure how we are supporting medical marijuana properly.
Yes.
And the second step, if there ever comes the point where it does become legalized, we still have to do the same thing. At some point, we have to make sure that the product that's being produced is being produced under GMP, it's meeting the qualifications, and then it is dispensed through appropriate. And you know, Todd, I'm glad you said it, because I never even crossed my mind.
No. And you know what?
Or what they are, and we should put them through pharmacy. Go ahead, Charity.
Well, that makes me think of a broader issue too, and I'd never thought about it in that lens, and I appreciate that. But what that makes me immediately kind of flip to is how sad it is that our small mom and pop pharmacies have been the victim of so much bad policy at the state and federal level. So the relationship. So I'm from Smithfield, grew up in Smithfield. You know, Jimmy Lynn's Pharmacy. That's where we went. You know, most of our life until you know they closed. Geez, it seems like yesterday, but it's probably been 10 years ago or more. But the relationship that my family and I had with him, and I remember a particular prescription that I think it might have been for acne or something, that when I was in high school, and I remember him pulling my mom aside, and my dermatologist prescribed it, and I remember him, you know, telling my mom, do not give this to her, that this is linked to suicide and all these terrible things. And I just don't, and I don't want to say what chain pharmacy I use now, but you don't get that same interaction. And I think that our policies need to start focusing on our small businesses, whether they're pharmacies or dentists or whatever it is, because you just become a number. And what you said about the, you know, our dispensaries, you know, and the labs that grow the alleged medicinal marijuana, we are just the population's just a number. The individual is just a number, and you don't have that individual relationship, and you don't get. I don't think that there's that follow up in terms of, and everybody's is different, so their reaction to the product is going to be different as well. And I hear nobody talking about, well, you know, my medicine's being adjusted accordingly, and I think it's because of the lack of that relationship.
Well, look, we know that there is a lot of issues and things that are broken in our system to deliver healthcare in the U.S., and that's the responsibility of drug manufacturers to insurance companies, PBMs, pharmacists, doctors, nurses, everybody. But we have to. It's such a big thing. It's hard, but we have to keep attacking it. And one of the things is that whether it's rural America or whether it's just pharmacy in general, is that the pharmacist used to play a huge role, and then they kind of went away. And now what we're going to see is, I believe, a renaissance with some of these small independent pharmacies, because we've seen even the large chains like Rite Aid close. So what we're going to do is the dependency on a pharmacist to be able to extend and have additional certifications, which we talked on another podcast, to make them even more valuable is going to be very important. But I want to wrap up the medical cannabis. So I think in summary, and Charity, I want you to have a final comment too, is look at medical marijuana is not going away, quite frankly, and marijuana is not going to go away.
No.
But I think what we've heard today is what's really, really important is that we still have work to do.
Yes.
And if it was my humble opinion, let's do what's right first. Let's get the medical marijuana thing better than it is now, because there's still holes in the system and how we're doing it. And Charity, you were great to bring those up. Whether or not recreational is going to happen is something that either any one of us as an individual, even as a representative, because Charity, I think there's 203 state representatives.
Yes.
So you're a voice of one, and a very important one. But you know, so if that does happen, if we have the medical marijuana side managed more properly, and then some of those lessons learned and things like that could probably have some positive influence if by chance something would happen on the recreational side. But I do think there are still significant concerns, as you pointed out, to just opening up the doors. And if we're making decisions on the health of our constituents based on generating tax revenue, and that's the only reason we're doing it, then it doesn't seem to me to be the best reason to do it.
Right.
So let's transition. I know that there's a House Bill 1444, which is really focused on small business and the ability to help provide health insurance. And that's something that I know you're also involved in. And that's important for a lot of reasons. One, ensuring employees working for small companies have access to healthcare, to making those companies competitive. So why don't we switch to that and give us some thoughts on where you think the importance of this bill and where it's going and what still needs to be done.
Yes, so a couple things, and I want to go back just for 1 second. House Bill 28, that was the co-prime sponsor on that was my colleague Tim Twardzik, so I just want to give him credit for that. The bill that you just mentioned, the prime sponsor is Valerie Gatos, and she really is well versed and educated on this issue. And it was I think it's a good transition that we were just talking about. And I pray that there is a renaissance of the local mom and pop pharmacist. And I think that this bill could help them in that pursuit. And what this bill, really the goal is basically to give small businesses the opportunity to join together in order to be more competitive in the market for health premiums or health care plans and premiums for their employees. And I think that that's an issue when you have a small pharmacy and you only have a handful of employees and your premiums are based on that number rather than a larger number that your chain pharmacists have the advantage of having those bigger numbers, which makes their prices more competitive. This bill, if we were able to get it across the finish line, would give our small businesses, whether they were pharmacists, dentists, whatever, farmers, the opportunity to join together so that it would make their finances go even further. And the small businesses across America are just under attack. Restaurants, you name it. So I think that this would be a really great thing. And I never looked at it the lens from the pharmacy, but I think it could help them get back on their feet as independents.
Well, I think, again, well said. I mean, when I look at my own career, my own life, I work for a company where I get a salary and I also get benefits. Mm-hmm. And those benefits are actually very, very valuable. Sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle because when people are looking at jobs, they're looking at what their annual compensation is. Yeah. And they lose sight of whatever they might be, educational support, obviously healthcare, and we need to make and that becomes something most people do look at and look at it because I know the value of what that is. So that also is a big reason we do is because it retains high quality people. Yeah. So to your point, if we're trying to strengthen local small business, where turnover is probably more significant. Because they don't have some of these benefits. If we can create that dynamic, it's going to create more stability for the business, better profitability, retention of employees, and when all that stuff comes together, quality always goes up. I've never not seen it in any business I've ever worked in. If I can retain my best employees, that's a good thing. If I can create sustainability. And consistency in my business, that's a really good thing. And when those things start to pile up, the profit takes care of itself usually, or the ability to run a successful business takes care of itself.
I do think the people that are, when healthcare benefits and coverage become ultra important, is sadly when somebody's sick, when you've got, a spouse is sick, a child is sick. And I'm convinced that this is why a lot of people work for Fayette County. Their wages are very low, but they get benefits with no pre-Obamacare. You had to find a plan that didn't have pre-existing coverage. And a lot of times that meant taking a job that you otherwise might not be happy with. But I'll tell you a heartbreaking story I had with a constituent, a few weeks ago, and I won't mention any names, but he and his wife have both been successful small business owners. And he, unfortunately, has been diagnosed with some pretty significant and pretty rare medical issues. And now, so he's unable to maintain his small business because he was the heart of it. It was basically a one-man show. And now his wife, who has had an extremely successful business, that she really is the integral part of it as well, she's contemplating closing down her business and taking a job just so that they have the benefits they need. And this is where it breaks my heart that it's the middle-class American that ends up, and I'm going to be vulgar for a second, that ends up being screwed, so to speak, because if you're in the poverty level and you're getting the state medical benefits, you're not worried about it. If you're independently wealthy, you're not worried about it. But it's the middle-class person that has worked hard all their lives. Maybe they've been able to pay off their own home. And then a lot of times you'll see that maybe they have a rental, which then that rental property makes them ineligible for anything. And you end up that one illness, if it can end up bankrupting them. And then when they've worked so hard to pass something on to their kids, that's all out the window. And that it's just that, and it's so wrong. We should be catering to the middle class working American who's going out and busting their butt every day, because they are responsible and they're good community members, good constituents, and they are trying to do the best for themselves and their family.
Yeah, it's amazing that one major event could have such a significant impact. And again, in the U.S., we should really not see that. And
Yeah.
I have a significant other that works for the government, and she doesn't make a lot, but she has she actually has better health care than I do.
Yeah.
For a corporate, and that is a real value, and she's very happy to serve people, and the real value to her is the great health care ensures herself and her family. So that's really awesome. So I think when it comes to this type of thing, is what it represents to me, and what's really important is that healthcare is extremely complicated. Yep. There is very large groups of influencers, from insurance to drug manufacturers to physicians and the healthcare providers. And what we know is that this is tough, but the goal has to be is at the end of the day, people can find insurance so that they can have good healthcare. We have to continue to provide products at make medicine affordable and accessible.
Yes.
And we have to fix the system that patients can also get to providers they should need. And we have to keep pharmacists, like independent pharmacists. I actually go to an independent pharmacy in Perry Township. And I switched all my prescriptions from one of the big national chains to them, because when I go in there now, and I've lost sight of that, they say, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" And you do have a chance. But at the same time, because I'm in the industry I'm in, I asked the owner of the pharmacy, I said, "So how many of your prescriptions that you're filling do you make a profit?" And he said, maybe 50%.
Yeah.
So when you think about this, we have to understand that a pharmacist still has to be profitable. Otherwise,
Yes.
they can't keep doors open. It has to be there. So we have to understand that the discourse and the dialogue and the interface really has to be robust. It has to be broad. And we have to get all the pieces together and start really talking about how A affects B and B affects C. Mm-hmm. And it's only by that we're going to start making a change. So, Charity, one of the last topics I'm going to surprise on you a little bit, because this is a little bit maybe more dear to me as a manufacturer. One of the challenges that we're seeing out there is the impact in the industry between federal and state. And obviously federal, we're talking about things like FDA and all the things that we have to do, Medicaid, Medicare, CMS, and all the things that we do. But on the state level, one of the things that is become challenging for us, but also I think an opportunity in other area. The challenging area is things like now states are looking for ways to generate income. Mm-hmm. And many of the states around the country, we have to pay state licensing. And now we're paying for Sharps programs, and we're paying for this as a manufacturer. So as a manufacturer, we're starting to get killed by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
And when we're trying to keep costs low, and the system is obviously issues that we're not going to talk about today about the influence of wholesalers and PBMs and how they play a role in this whole process. Is that something that you see the state continuing to look at that to generate revenue in absence of not doing marijuana or recreational marijuana? The states are obviously always challenged with budgets. What do you think about things like where the state comes in terms of continuing to layer on these type of costs that does make it difficult for certain businesses, whether it's pharmaceutical or other, to actually operate successfully in the state?
You know what? So as a fiscally conservative representative, when I came into office, I was approached by a particular group to sign an oath. And This is the only oath that I've taken because I'm not going to box myself. I make decisions based on what I think is the right thing on the merit of the language of the bill itself. But the oath that I took when I looked at it, it was like, well, I agree with all this anyway, and it basically limited government, not increasing taxes, not increasing fees. And and this isn't just a healthcare issue, it's across the board. And until we take what kind of a doge look at things, and I get so upset about fraud, waste, and abuse, before we need to take a hard look at how we're spending money and grant programs sometimes, and I've seen this even in my own district. And again, it goes back to the middle class person becomes the victim because you see some welfare fraud and abuse on one end of the spectrum. And as bad as that is, if you're able-bodied and you're cheating the system and you could be out working and you choose not to, as bad as that is, it makes me 100 times angrier to see a rich person or a wealthy individual who gets richer on the taxpayer dime because the government is divvying out money often via some kind of a grant program or a contract, so that type of, that's abuse. When you are, and at the national level, when we were paying for transgender studies in third world countries, why don't they eliminate some of that instead of overburdening our businesses with excessive fines and fees? Now, I can understand having a license fee that may make a particular agency fund itself, but do we not already pay enough taxes? So no, yes, I agree with you. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think this is just one example of where in America and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we need to tighten our belt and we need to let free market go. And we need to stop putting excessive red tape and fees on our people so that they can go out and flourish.
Yeah, I appreciate that position you have, because I think for me, I always said, I have never been overly political in my life, but being around it a lot more, given my who I live with and getting involved with it, I think we all have a responsibility. I've always voted. I've always took that responsibility seriously, but I think we all have a responsibility to continue to engage in our community at some level, and that means you have to be involved in politics a little bit. But I think I always thought that the most important thing, and I think that's what you were saying, Charity, is that get your house in order first and then worry about what else you can do to help. And we'll always help, because that's the spirit of America and everything else, whether it's domestically or foreign. And so for me, I think that's what's really important about what you said. Let's make sure the stuff that we've already had in place and the things that we do, let's make sure that's working well and being managed well and effectively, because then you don't have to keep adding on and adding on and adding on and adding on a different thing here, which makes it more difficult, or at minimum, make it more frustrating.
Yeah.
Now the businesses are trying to determine how they can continue to be successful. But if we can make it more simple, if we can make sure the things that we do have in place that are not going to change, and we know certain things aren't going to change, and we make them right, then you won't have to do all these other things. And it makes the free market, makes the economy work better, makes the access to medicine better. All those things I do. So I appreciate that really. Your position, I think, is very consistent with what we had hoped, on our side as an industry, is that we can make sure that we can continue to invest in new drugs, invest in new ways to create value around, not just on price, but on the value that we give down to patients. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do at Urao, is that our new corporate tagline is doing things differently. And as a company, our industry is always just based on, lowest price. Well, we kind of use that up, right? Access to affordable, high quality medicines is the mantra that everybody's used for 25 years. So my question to myself and to my team is, we can't keep using that. So it's beyond that now. Okay, that's like the ticket into the game. So how do we continue to look at ways to improve the way we can help our role in delivering healthcare in a more positive and more expansive way that actually reaches the patient? So that's one of the things we do. So I'm always here to dialogue with you, and hopefully have the chance to collectively maybe put our brains together and do some good things. So with this, what I'd like to do is close. Here's an opportunity just for you to share with the community any final thoughts you want. It has been an amazing opportunity to talk to you. I hope that we will schedule this again and continue to discuss these topics. But I want to give you the floor and let you have a chance to say what you would like to finish this podcast on.
And then I find myself saying this anytime I get to talk to a crowd. I think for generations, Americans have had the benefit of sitting back and trusting their elected leaders and what was going on at the different levels of government. It ran the way it was supposed to. And right now, whether it's, everything from our local townships and municipalities, our school boards, our water authorities, county level government, state, federal, it seems to be dysfunctional. And I think going back to, for generations, people could turn a blind eye and maybe didn't think about it. I was one of those people until about 10 years ago when I decided to run for office. I lost, but God works in mysterious ways because it opened my eyes to politics. So my call to action, if whether whether it's either of you or whether it is somebody listening at home, I've met some people in Harrisburg that are absolutely genius. I've met some elected officials that I would not trust to babysit my cows. So, if you feel, and I'm not looking for more people that are corrupt. I'm not looking for more people that don't have a brain. But if you have a backbone and you're honest and you're ethical and you're not afraid to take a hard stance when you're doing it based on truth and principle, think about stepping up and running for office. Because until good, honest, ethical people step up and start taking a stance, people that want, the things that you were talking about, are basic transparency and fiscal accountability. Every nickel of taxpayer dime, we should know exactly where it's going, and it needs to go for appropriate stuff, not to line some wealthy individual's pocket. So this is, if you feel it in your heart, maybe step up, get involved, even if it's just going to your meetings and holding your elected officials accountable. That's how I want to end this. Please do. And hopefully, even if I reach one set of ears that I can get to come out of their box and step up, that would be wonderful.
Well, Charity, first of all, I agree. I hear the passion, and you obviously represent it. No pun intended.
Thank you.
Doing it, and I think Todd's his legs shaking over here, so I think he's actually ready to gear up and go down and either on local council or something.
Good.
By the end of January. Listen, thank you so much. At the end of the day, you made one word in your closing remarks that really struck me, is that dysfunctional. And I think the fact is that most of us probably believe, whether it's healthcare delivery, whether it's state government, federal government, whatever it might be, that we still seem to be in this season or this phase of dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And if we could at least agree with something like that, hey, there is dysfunction. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not like the worst thing in the world. It is. It's true. But then to your point, okay, if we all accept that there's dysfunction, let's all put a little effort into to start removing that dysfunction, and we'll be pretty damn impressed, excuse my language, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, that we can overcome dysfunction. Because I do believe that, the U.S. represents a lot of really good things, and we still feel that we're the greatest country in the world, but there's probably argument to suggest that we're not the greatest country in certain things, and maybe just fixing dysfunction, something as simple and common and can make a huge difference. So thank you for all that you do for your community and your constituents. Thank you for stepping up and walking the walk, or walking the talk. Yeah, I guess that's a better way of saying it. And we wish you all the best, and we look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thank you so very much. Anytime.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Executive Dose with host Stephen Beckman, and we had a special episode with State Representative Charity Krupa. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from other state representatives. A shout out to you if you're listening. If you want to get involved and you want to bring on your state representative to the Executive Dose, please do so. Please reach out to the Pharmacy Podcast, and we will talk to you next time on the Executive Dose.
Take care.